Oh, Danny boy, the hot seat was arriving with SVG and St. Smith already signed. The honeymoon's gone and Trackhouse wants you winning. 'Tis you, ahead of the 3 wide. He won the race, it's Suarez ahead by inches. He beat the champ and the rowdy legend too. And he'll be here in the 99 forever. Oh, Danny boy, Justin Marks loves you.
It was beautiful. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Happy Hour podcast. My name is Trey Lyle, one half of your regular hosting duties. The other boy, the beautiful pipes they just sang, Mr. Michael Massey at M_Massey22. Getting a little creative with Daniel Suárez, also on topic with what we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show with Daniel Suárez's future with Trackhouse. That'd be a fun one to make after a pretty fun ending to a race on Sunday.
Yeah, it was. I really had to think about a song this week, and because it's something that captures the right vibe, and that song I feel like did. So, luckily, I didn't really know that. I knew the first line of that song. I had to learn like the rest of it, how it actually went. But yeah, here we go.
Well, that was pretty impressive. Our third host this week, well, what we decided is to get this guy, I don't want to say a promotion, but he definitely deserved a little spot in our, foursome square, because he's the man behind the scenes a lot with our happy hour videos. Every social video, basically, we put out, all the YouTube videos we put out last year, the social clips, all the fun stuff we've done has been made by this guy right here, Caleb Barnes. He works for us at Front Stretch. He's sort of my number 2 now. I got Brian Nolan's spot when he decided to, get to the cushy ops manager. And then so we needed someone to fill a little bit of my shoes. But Caleb's been helping me ever since he's joined the Front Stretch team at Caleb Barnes _ on Twitter. Caleb, you're in the big leagues tonight. Are you excited?
Oh, yeah, I'm super excited. Yeah, I'm super happy to get the call up the ranks, at least, whether it's for a week. We'll see if it turns into something longer. Probably not, but happy to at least be on in front of the camera for once this time.
He called you as number 2. How do you feel about being called number 2?
Hey, I was like number 3 or 4, or probably way further down at like 10 or 11 just a few weeks ago before the season started. So I'm getting there.
I don't know.
And reminder, no Denny Hamlins this week. No one do a Denny Hamlin and release a number 1 or especially a number 2. So let's keep that in mind. Our guest this week, I think he is quickly becoming. This is his third time on. I believe this is his third time on. It is also he is our first non-Front Stretch guest of the year.
How Peter?
Peter Stratta of TSJ Sports, buddy. How are you doing? You are now officially, I think, in the lead for most frequent happy hour guest. How are you doing? And it's good to see your face.
Doing great. It's great to see all your faces as well. And I'm a big Family Guy fan. So that clip, I had no idea it was coming, and I got a good laugh out of that just now.
I will say this, a little inside baseball, Massey, myself, and, I'll give him credit, Brian Nolan and I were scrambling to find the right exact clip for that exact moment about an hour before the show began, including when you hopped on a little bit early and I had to silently find the right clip and edit it correctly so you didn't know that was about to happen. As always, these are live streamed on our YouTube page, youtube.com/frontstretch, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/frontstretch. Pretty easy. So if you want to, make sure you like and subscribe. You can also leave a comment. We will show them on the screen. We'd love to hear your voice throughout the show. This is an interactive show, so we'd love to hear it. As always, if you're listening to it in podcast form, that's also great too. We love that as well. The Front Stretch Podcast Network is going great. So make sure you subscribe to our podcast network as well and leave that 5-star review and tell us how much you enjoy this podcast more than you do Bringing the Heat with Brian Nolan. So just to, tell Brian Nolan how you really feel about him. Just kidding, Brian. We do actually love you here, but it's a fun show we got in store for you. So let's get right into it. As always, sit back, relax, crack open that cold one, unless you're driving, of course, or of not legal age. We should mention that. But let's dive right in. And as always, our guest, Mr. Stratta, you get to go first. And we just saw a pretty epic finish this past Sunday at Hot Atlanta, and you wanted to talk about that.
Yes, that's right. It was amazing to see that finish in person. I think I'm the only panelist tonight who was at the race, but I did not think that
rub it in.
Not trying to rub it in, but I'm just saying I did not envision that finish happening. I mean, as late as the packing in turn 2, I didn't think we'd get a 3 wide, let alone a photo finish. So that was just still watching it back, whether it's the broadcast or fan videos, just it's insane to see how close the 3 cars were at the line. And a question I have for the panel tonight is, was that the best finish we've seen in the NASCAR Cup Series?
You want me to lead off? I'll say just I've been watching over 20 years, and it was great. Okay, it's the best finish of the next gen era for sure. Maybe the past decade. I throw in there the Kyle and Kyle show at Chicagoland up there as well. Yeah. But that might, because that race they're both hanging it out on the edge. Going back a little further,
Kentucky,
I
4 wide with 1 lap to go at Kentucky, and Cole Custer gets it done. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good too. I actually forgot about that one. That's a good call. But I think I put it like top 5. Just because I think number 2 on that list is Watkins Glen 2012. And I think number 1 is Ricky Craven, Kurt Busch. And will always be, because that's 2 guys at the greatest track, just hanging it out there. And it's really it was a David beats Goliath situation, because Craven was an underdog. Kurt Busch with Roush Racing, who was a powerhouse at the time. And the fact that they're coming across the line, just slamming into each other, and the call by Fox, DW, Larry Mack, Mike Joy, they were on top of their game.
Have you ever?
That'll be, so I'll put it as the top 5 race, top 5 finish. I'm not going to put it number 1.
Yeah, it was good. It was up there, but what are we counting as the finish? Just the last turn 3 and 4, and then the last couple hundred yards to the finish line, or the last couple laps leading up to it? Because I think whenever I think about the greatest finishes in my mind, I think about the ones that the anticipation is building. You see Larson catching Kyle Busch, and you're like, oh, here we go. This is about to go down. Or you see Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch beating doors, and so stuff's about to go on. And this one, there's a late race restart, which it's pack racing. You kind of knew they're going to be together anyways. But honestly, even with 3 and 2 to go, Daniel Suárez was kind of in a Team Penske sandwich. He was pushing Ryan Blaney, had Austin Cindric behind, and Cindric wasn't helping Suarez. So I didn't think they were going to even get a run. But then it really just all formulated down the backstretch. But I would say definitely the best of the next gen era. And it's certainly 3 wide across the line. It's not going to get any better than that either. But the best finish ever, maybe not quite, but it's certainly up there.
So 2 have I thought of off the top of my head, and it's maybe more in the sense of what Gil was talking about, building anticipation. I think 2022 Martinsville, just because it's the Hail Melon, and I remember being there and just the 5 minutes of did we just see what we saw? Did that really happen? And obviously that was in the next gen car too. And that's a move you're not going to see 3 wide racing get banned. The Hail Melons, that's something that's never going to happen, whereas this could happen again. And I know that wasn't for the win, but it was for the last playoff spot, which is still a big thing. A finish which wasn't inches close. I still think the 2001 Pepsi 400 needs to be in this greatest finish, because you have the sentimental favorite. You have Dale Jr. going from 7 to first on that final restart, and the crowd just really, like, the crowd was like, that might have been the best crowd in the history of the sport. Just the way it built, and like everybody wanting that moment to happen and truly needing that moment to happen. I mean, you could argue it's the biggest moment in the history of the sport, just because it brought so much healing and so much emotion into it. And that belongs in this conversation. Whereas I think most people are talking about coming off a turn 4, that last finish. I mean, it feels like if Ryan Blaney's out front, it's going to be an inches finish at the line. But it definitely belongs in the conversation. But I agree with Massey. I think 03 Darlington, if we're talking about just one lap to decide it, it's just it's the best, because you have to take in consideration the type of racing, and it's more likely we are going to see that type of finish at Atlanta than we would see the other finish at Darlington. Granted, we almost had it in the Xfinity Series this last year with Kyle Larson and John Hunter Nemechek, but John Hunter wrecked himself coming off of 4. So that's where I kind of, lean towards 03 Darlington. So I agree with my bearded friend.
I would also agree with what you guys have said. 03 Darlington is kind of that pinnacle that I don't know if we'll ever hit again. Every race you guys mentioned has an amazing finish in its own right, but like some of you said, I would put this definitely somewhere in the conversation, whether that's top 5 or top 10. Definitely best of the next gen era, and it'll be fun to see this finish replayed for years to come.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Massey.
Well, I was just gonna say, in talks of like sentimental, you brought up the sentimental finishes. Like
Ravens won too, with the underdog aspect of it. I won't deny that.
The Kevin Harvick beating Jeff Gordon would be the sentimental favorite at Atlanta. So I don't know. Does this even top that?
That's a good point.
Just because, there's so much emotion that played into Kevin Harvick winning that race three weeks after Dale Sr. passed. So I don't know. This might be a better finish, but if you throw in emotion, the Harvick one probably still takes the top spot.
Well, speaking of Atlanta and how great it is, your thoughts, remember, hit the comment section. We'll show them. So if you think this is the best finish ever and you think we suck, let us know. Or you think we're great, let us know as well. But this debate was brought up the last time we went to Atlanta, and I think we now have to revisit it again. It was that good of a race. Dale Jr. has spoken about this. He's kind of changed his mind to the Bristol night race to this race, the Atlanta race, being, if you want to bring a new fan to one race, it would be this one. I will now give the floor to Massey to set up the topic a little bit better than I did.
Yeah, so for years and years and years, if you could bring a new fan to one race, as you said, it was always the Bristol night race was the one that was talked about. And now the discussion has been flipped after seeing, which 24 hours before that Atlanta race, you wouldn't have said Atlanta, but now everybody's saying Atlanta because of that race. Would Atlanta be the best place to take a new fan for their first race? I think seeing that pack race thing would certainly help. I think also the fact that next gen at short tracks isn't amazing. Bristol is not the same old Bristol that we've been seeing. Kind of lowers its stock a little bit for fans to see. But what do you guys think? Is the top, if you got a friend who's never seen a race in person, where are you taking them?
As someone who has taken a new fan to a race, that race I decided to take them to is the Fall Martinsville race in 2018. Obviously not knowing the fireworks that would happen at the finish, but lo and behold, it delivered between Truex and Logano that season. And I remember going over to him and telling him they don't get much better than this. I'm so happy you have this amazing an experience as your first race. So I lean more towards fall Martinsville, just with all the history of that track, the atmosphere there, and the playoff implications that, especially now with it being the second to last race, that weekend always holds.
See, that would have been my answer, Peter, until I actually went to Atlanta last summer, made the trip down in July, just kind of a spontaneous thing. And so I was there. I remember listening to Dale Jr. saying all that. My go-to used to be Fall Martinsville, and then Bristol was up there, and then maybe the pack races. But with the next gen car, everything switched around. And I did take some friends to the Martinsville Ross Chastain Hail Melon race. That one was pretty incredible just to see their reactions there. But then we went back in the spring, and it was no good at all. So after just the way that they drive in Atlanta, I would absolutely say that it's that they're on edge. It's a different style pack racing than what we've seen at Talladega and Daytona. You can tell that these guys are having a hard time. They're having to handle if someone lets out of the gas, they would just dive to the bottom and pass 3-4 cars and then try to look for a hole. And it's just super aggressive. The drivers were talking about how much fun they were having instead of riding around saving fuel. They're all slicing and dicing, not only at the front of the pack, but in the back of the pack and throughout the middle. Was just incredible last summer. And then that race was cut short, and this one lived up to it yet again. I feel like New Atlanta hasn't disappointed yet.
I'm starting to agree with it. Also, when Dale Jr. says something, it's pretty good to listen to. I feel like he's pretty good at this stuff. And knowing we're fan interest, because like 95% of NASCAR's fan base is his fan base. So, but I will say this. I thought like the Coke 600 would be a really good one just because it's a historic race. The racing at Charlotte has been incredible. But then in my head, I'm like, do you really want to take a new fan to the longest possible race?
awful.
I don't think that's a good, like,
Right,
so
yeah.
I will say this. If Charlotte goes back to the oval for the playoff race, and it's the Bank of America 400 is what it used to be called. I would consider Charlotte, because then you can also add to the aspect, like make it a weekend and be like, hey, look, you can go see X Race Shop, and kind of you get your feet wet, and not just the race, but like
The Hall of
teams
Fame, too.
itself. Yeah, the Hall of Fame, the history, because that would be a cool aspect of it. I have a special affinity now. I've gone to Martinsville a couple of times. I always will have a special affinity towards Richmond. It's my track where my fandom became, but it would be between the Bristol night race, just because it's the Bristol night race, and it seemingly, no matter what, will deliver in some sort of way. Like last year, the next gen racing wasn't great, but like you had all the drama at the bubble, and then you had Denny, drop the mic. Like that was still an epic, event to go to. That's an event to go to. The way everything happens. So I would be between the Bristol night race and Atlanta, and maybe I'll pick the playoff race just because it's a playoff race and you have higher stakes, but it's also Atlanta in the summer compared to Atlanta in the spring. So, but I would lean towards Atlanta, but I think the shine that the Bristol night race has is not gone away and will never go away.
I think as you guys are talking, the more my answer bounces all over the place, because it's definitely different from where it was a couple years ago. I honestly probably would have said Daytona or Talladega, maybe the Daytona 500, like as recently as like a year or two ago. But if it's going to be anything like it was last week, where people are going 30% throttle around there and just grid locked, saving fuel the whole time, I don't want to have a new fan watch that for the first time. So that kind of strays me away from Daytona Talladega to maybe it would be Atlanta, because you do have the pack racing, and I think that's appealing to new fans that don't fully understand everything that's going on. They see these cars on top of each other, and that's entertaining. Whereas I feel like you got to get a deeper appreciation for the sport before you can take them to like a Charlotte or a Kansas, or you kind of got to understand that these guys are on the edge of control at these tracks. So I'd say start them with a pack race where they're not saving fuel the whole time, and then work them on up to like a intermediate or short track or something.
I think the Roval could get special mention in there. Like the old Roval races used to be really cool, just because it was different. Like especially you got a Formula One fan, like you bring them and they like that style of racing. It's like, hey, you don't have to sit for 15 minutes to see a car quick. You watch the whole race. It'd be interesting to see like their reaction of it. I think it depends on the person too. Like, do they have no kind of connection to motorsports, or are they a Formula One fan, for example? Maybe they, that would be interesting to see the differences there and how that would work out. But we will move on here. We're zooming through these topics, man. You know what I noticed something, Massey? When one certain person is on, we can actually stay on time.
You have a Brian or Tom or Neff? I think,
No, after last week, Neff would have had a 10-minute show. We let it keep going. You went through every topic in 5 minutes. So go listen back to that. You can kind of hear the sense of panic that Massey and I had when Neff went through every topic
Hold on.
we had to stop him there. But let's move on to another topic. All right, Mr. Barr. Now we're going to like, I guess, the silly season. Yes, we're talking about silly season the second week into the season because things are brewing, folks. And two big results this weekend that kind of resulted in we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna recklessly speculate here during happy hour for our next two topics. Give us your thoughts as we go along. Leave them in the comments section down below. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/frontstretch, our Facebook page, facebook.com/frontstretch, or as always, you can subscribe to the Front Stretch Podcast Network, and you connect with us at Trey Lyle VT, at Peter Stratta, our guest, at Caleb Barnes _, and at M_Massey22, as I do my Vanna White impersonation right there. Mr. Barnes, are you ready for this? Your first time, up to bat for us. What do you want to talk about?
So it's never too early to start speculating, and Daniel Suárez's win certainly has a lot of people talking. Let's go back to 2022. Daniel Suárez was super competitive in the first half of the season. People are like, when's he going to get his first win? Trackhouse is looking really good. He wins at Sonoma, makes the playoffs. And then 2023 was kind of a no-show. Didn't really run up front a whole lot. Wasn't really in the conversation. So now SVG comes in, wins a race at a road course. He's over here in the States. Trackhouse signs Zane Smith. They've got Connor Zilic coming up through the rankings, and everybody's looking at Daniel Suárez like, man, he's not winning over there. Ross Chastain's winning. SVG is the hottest name coming over from down under. So Suárez has got to be on the hot seat. And a lot of people are like, oh, Suárez got his win for 2024. He's good. But I was thinking he won by just a couple of inches at a drafting track. Is that really enough to secure his spot for next season? Or what does he have to do to make sure that he's going to stay in that 99, even after Justin Marks gave his little like, oh, we're going to keep Daniel Suárez with us in the future. So where do you guys see, did Suárez do enough, or what does he have to do to keep his ride?
Short of winning the Daytona 500, I don't think he could have saved his ride in the first 2 weeks of the season doing anything. Obviously, if you win a Daytona 500, you'd want to keep that team together, as we saw a couple years ago with Front Row Motorsports, because there were question marks about them after that year. But McDowell, his win in the Great American Race kind of solidified that. But I'm very interested to see how Suarez does with his new crew chief, Matt Swiderski. They kind of had an off-season swap with Colleague Racing. Swiderski was on the 16 last year with AJ, and now comes over to the 99 with Suarez and at Trackhouse. I'm really interested to see how the two of them mesh this season as they go along, and now knowing that they're in the playoffs. Because I believe 2 years ago, Suarez did make the round of 12. I'm really interested to see where their ceiling is and if they can remain competitive. Obviously, aside from just super speedways, but on road courses or on intermediates, how they perform week to week.
So do you know who's third in the Xfinity Series points right now?
Is it SVG?
It's SVG.
I finished third last week.
How much you want to bet he will win at least 2 road course races in that car? Because I would bet there's a good chance.
I mean, his greatest competition is his teammate. So
yeah,
that'll be the battle.
Which I am more pumped for an Xfinity Series road course race with those two just going at it. It'll be but I digress. So I am heavy into the Zane Smith camp, as we'll talk about the draft briefly at the end. And so I'm very high on him. And I always thought the natural thing that was going to happen was basically either Suarez was going to get booted out or he was just going to swap rides with Zane next year and, give Zane the better. I don't know if it would be better equipment. Let's assume it's a third Trackhouse car. So if Zane doesn't win this year, which, let's say Zane doesn't win this year, but he kind of outperforms Suarez, but doesn't make the playoffs. That will be an interesting scenario if you're Justin Marks, because it clearly shows the rookie is the better driver. He's the younger talent. You're clearly investing in. I mean, they have a 5-deep pipeline at this point. You have Suarez. I mean, you have Zane Smith. You have SVG, and then you have Connor Zilich, right? He's in the track. You have 3 guys behind him for essentially 2 spots, and one's locked up because you have one of the best in the series with one of the best, funding now because he's got the Busch deal in Ross Chastain. So you really have 3 to 4 guys for one spot, maybe 2. I don't know how long this Spire deal is going to last. It literally looks like that third Spire car, the 71, is a third Trackhouse team. It is a Trackhouse pit crew, unlike the other 2 Spire cars. So do you keep doing that until you can obviously the charter deal needs to be answered. What if they give out 2 more charters? That would fix your issue if you're Justin Marks. Was it Brian who brought the point about Pitbull? Someone brought up a point about Pitbull and maybe his investment in the team and, with the Latin America and Daniel Suárez, obviously, being Mexican.
Or Dalton Hopkins,
that was Dalton Hopkins from a mysterious location.
From the great beyond.
Yes, from the great beyond. From an undisclosed location, he somehow got cell phone service. We're glad you're doing okay, buddy. So, hopefully he was able to watch the race, and so that could be a thing. But I agree. I don't think this win is locking him in. Now, let's say he might not win a race the rest of the year, but he gets through a round in the playoffs. Then I think it's once again, I'm going to use my favorite meme. Shout out to Charles Barkley. We got to start having a dialogue. And so I think that's where I'm at in this. I think it's moved from, I'll put it this. It was very hot going into the season. Now it's a mild hot, maybe a medium hot. It's definitely a little bit of cold water has been thrown on it, but I would not be shocked if, similar to the last, in 22 when he won, but then that was kind of it from him. He faded as the season went on and was not really a factor in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think about the first person that comes to mind is Brian Vickers, who also in his last year with Hendrick won a pack race, and they replaced them anyways.
Who did he wreck? It was that the year he wrecked Jimmy and Dale?
Dale and Jimmy.
Yeah, that.
Hey, he was on his way out anyways. Might as well ruffle some feathers. But yeah, I think
speaking of that, former Hendrick drivers, are we going to talk? We're going to talk about cheating later. Maybe we need to bring up Casey Mears, Cole Pern, and some tungsten butt plugs.
Oh boy. So yeah, that's more than I ever wanted to know about Casey.
I think that had enough. Do you think those tungsten butt plugs had enough? Were long enough. Something that Samantha Bush apparently has never experienced.
It's I had no idea what you're talking about there, Trey.
Just saying. I'm just asking. This is we're journalists. We got to get the journalistic questions in here. You're the as the old man, you are the racing historian, so you know this stuff.
I don't know what goes on.
This might be the first time I just completely stopped Massey's thought process.
Yeah, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
Casey Mears.
but
Or not Casey Mears, Brian
Vickers. But yeah, I think I said it on here a couple weeks ago that Suarez basically, if he went and missed the playoffs again, it'd be real easy to replace him. If he goes and wins 5 races this year, kind of what you were saying, Trey, make a playoff run, something like that. You might see him back in the 99 again. I mean, how could you replace a guy that wins a couple times?
He technically could still be the 99. It would just be 99 under Spire.
Yeah, I guess you could do that. I don't know, but but you gotta love how Trackhouse bookends the field though. 1 and 99, they ruined that symmetry.
I mean, they could do it with 1 and 97.
True. Well, now Suarez is still 99. Yeah,
I know, but SVG is 97.
I know, but if Suarez is still 99, then
I know, but I'm saying if they replace him with SVG, it could be 1 and 97.
Oh yeah. You're saying if Suarez is not in a 99 car?
Yes.
Okay, I got you. But I think there's a couple things to look at. I'm thinking about Zane Smith. I'm thinking about other situations where a team has farmed out a driver to a team they have an alliance with.
We go back to Eric Jones and Joe Gibbs Racing. He kind of got, it was Eric Joe, it was the same thing with Matt Kenseth and Eric Jones, and then Eric Jones and Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell was with LFR, who booted out Matt to Benedetto to put Christopher Bell in the car because of the Joe Gibbs relationship. And then LFR shut down, so it forced Gibbs to put Bell in the 20 and kick what's his name? Eric Jones out.
But for both of those deals, it was just 1 year that the guy was in the car, right? But
Eric Jones was in the car and then the 20 for a couple years.
No. Jones was in the 77 for 1 year with Furniture Row.
Yeah.
And then he came up.
Zane Smith to be in the 71 for 1 year.
Yeah, so just 1 year for Zane. But the other one is Ryan Blaney, who was in the 21 for 3 years. I believe.
But didn't they just add the 12? They didn't really.
Yeah, they added a car.
Or Casey Kane, his last year with Hendrick, he was farmed out to LFR too.
That's true too. Or Casey Atwood, going way back, Everhand was farmed out to that 7 car. But no, so there's really not really a standard, but I could see them, if Suarez has a great year, they buy a year, have Zane do the Spire car a second season, just to buy some time. But maybe some kind of deal where like SVG drives a colleague car in Cup for a year.
So Trackhouse buys 2 teams essentially. 2 extra rides from two separate teams.
And look, colleague, from what I've heard, they need
doing it this year because SVG Cup Racing is not in Project 91; it's in the 16.
Yeah. But yeah, so colleague needs some money, and I could see them maybe even leasing out that charter. This is just me sort of spitballing.
We are recklessly speculating. That's how I set up this segment.
Yeah. So them leasing the charter to Trackhouse for a year, maybe even selling the charter. But all of this would be a lot easier if with the new charter agreement that is
they add like intense, 4. They add 4 more.
Yeah, add 4 more.
1 to Dale Jr. Trackhouse picks up another one, and then
2311, and then whatever with the 4th. We need to get 4 more charters.
A super team headed by LeBron. Oh no, LeBron already owns a team. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. James, I want to wish you a good evening as well, my friend. Thanks so much for tuning in. So glad you left a comment on our Facebook page. So I will show that for the boys here. Good evening, my friend James. So that will turn into my turn now, and I think this one is even more spicier. Ladies and gentlemen, the favorite in the Xfinity Series, again, is Austin Hill after he somehow wins another plate track or drafting track. I hate how they call it drafting tracks now. Just call it super speedways or something. But he's won 3 straight February Daytonas. He's won, 3 of the last 6 in Atlanta or something like that since this new configuration. RCR is in a interesting dynamic because it looked like last year Austin Hill was heading to Colleague Racing to drive either the 31 or the 16.
Even Colleague thought so.
Even Colleague thought so. Go listen to Chris Rice on BBC. I think it was a 31. But then he shockingly goes back to RCR, which is a Colleague affiliate, and is brought in recklessly speculating. Why did that happen? Did an underhanded deal get made to get Austin Hill staying in RCR? Ladies and gentlemen, I propose this. I think Miss Good Old Pop has quite a situation on his hands. And I think there's two phases of this. He is not replacing Kyle Busch. It's Kyle Busch. Like, Austin Dillon, I think, has gotten to the underrated category, but has not matched the speed since Kyle Busch has gotten there. And to a lesser degree, when Tyler Reddick was there, especially his last year with Reddick. We have seen younger owners join these marquee teams. We know eventually RCR is going to Austin Dillon, maybe through Mike Dillon, his father, who is the son-in-law of Richard Childress. Is that transition going to happen sooner than we think? Because does good old Pop, aka Richard Childress, have no choice? And I don't think it'll be the 3 car. They'll change it either to the 29 or they can't make it the 21. So the 29 or the 2 or whatever they may do. Because I don't think it'll be the 3 car. But would you see a situation where RCR will have no choice in order to keep Austin Hill, especially if he wins the Xfinity Series championship, by having him replace Austin Dillon and move Austin Dillon to an ownership role would be what happens. Ooh, the silence is deafening. No one agrees with me. Someone say something. Peter, you want to go first?
You go for it, Caleb.
Yeah.
I'm looking up something.
Honestly, I almost wonder if Dillon's not the one who, if he has another season like he had last year, or if he has a season, like if the season that he's started to have continues, he's been taken out, had crashes these first 2 weeks, and I feel like he crashed a lot last year as well. I wonder if he's the one who steps away and says, yeah, this isn't for me anymore. Because you hear him whenever he joins the booth, and he's talked about Austin Hill before, and just knowing how good that talent is coming up. Now, I would like to see Austin Hill get a few more cup races in, whether it's with the 62 team or if RCR brings back that 33. I know there's supposed to maybe have Brody Kostecki in, and then there's also rumors that they're going to be at some other races. So we'll see who they'll bring up for that. But I would like to see Austin Hill get some more shots at both super speedways and cup, but also non-super speedways. And because we've seen Riley Herbst get into the front row cars and be just as good as they are running up at the front of the pack. But yeah, I think if Austin Hill has another great season, he dominated Daytona and stole another win in Atlanta. And if we see him become more dominant on the non-super speedway tracks, then I think he's got to at least earn a shot in the Cup Series next year.
It may be hard to believe, but this is already Austin Dillon's 11th season in the Cup Series, and I agree. I think if he has a lackluster season, then he may do some inward soul searching over the latter half of the season if he misses the playoffs and into the offseason on if he really wants to still do this for the long term. So if he does choose to exit and move into the managerial role, I think back to 2 years ago, he was the one who instigated the conversation with Kyle Busch to bring Kyle to the 8 car. So I really think that the long-term play RCR has is for Austin and maybe even Ty Dillon to be running that team for decades to come. But
if Ty Dillon isn't going to come right anytime soon, so that's okay.
But if Austin does show more competitive speed this year, which you'd have to eventually, being teammates with Kyle Busch, you'd at least think so, then maybe he sticks around for another couple of seasons. But again, going back to something someone said earlier, if there are more charters available next year, maybe RCR buys a third charter and does bring the 33 back full time.
That's a good point. That could happen. There we go. We figured out the fifth. Sorry, Swifties. She's not coming to NASCAR. It's going to good old Richard.
Yeah, that's what I thought the 62 beard car was going to be, maybe run like 10 races or something this year with Hill driving like they started doing last year. And then they show up with Alfredo in the Daytona 500. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? So I'm not sure what their plan for Austin Hill is. The thing I was looking up is Richard Childress, when he quit driving and became just solely focused on being the owner for Dale Earnhardt, he was 35 years old. Austin Dillon this year turns 34 years old. So,
now that's
I just
and I mean you want to double down on it, like we're talking about a clogged pipeline. Jesse Love might be even better than Austin Hill. Like he's gotten 2 poles in his first 2 races. He dominated that race, whether you liked it or not, at Atlanta. And it felt like he won every ARCA race last year. Like he might be better. Like, and I'm not trying to take away from Austin Hill, but like Jesse Love, you could argue it might be the best young prospect in the sport, and he's 19 years old.
They need a third charter. They need a third charter.
Trackhouse needs a third charter. Dale Jr. wants a charter. We need Oprah to come out and be like, "You get a charter. You get a charter. You get a charter." I mean, that's what needs to happen. It looks like.
Very true.
All right, so I go ahead, Massey.
No, I just say like Austin Dillon. I feel like there was a time where he was like the fringe playoff driver, where he was like top 16 in points every year. And I don't know if it's just he didn't adapt as well with the next gen, or if everyone else has gotten better. But it's like he's fallen off a cliff the past couple years. What I could see him doing, if he does want to keep driving, why not do like Eric Almirola and go down and run Xfinity races part-time, or run for another championship? He could be like Justin Allgaier, Elliott Sadler, those guys run for some Xfinity championships. He's already got one. He could have become like an all-time great down there.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think his career is going to go down as underrated. He won, 4 races, but people are going to point to the races like he wrecked Almirola. He won the 600 because, ironically, going back to this week, he saved enough gas like Austin Hill did. The kind of perfect strategy play at Texas, but then you look at like the 2 races he won at Daytona, one mainly because he got super duper lucky in the whole field. Like it rained in the whole field.
He had an act of God happen in front of him.
Yeah, but that happens. That's racing. And then obviously the Daytona 500 where, some people said he just wrecked Eric Almirola. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if I was in Austin Dillon's shoes and I could win the Daytona 500, I'd wreck any being on play. It's the Daytona 500. Daytona 500 pole setter. It's going to be, I think, an underrated career at the end of the day. And, he's not liked because, one, he got in the 3 car and everyone wanted Dale Jr. to be in the 3 car. And 2, everyone thought he got there because of, being the grandson of Richard Childress. But he won championships in both of the lower series. Like,
which
definitely
no
earned
other
his way
young
to the
driver
cup seat.
today can say.
Yeah, like, and with this, he definitely earned his cup ride. So that's interesting. All right. Before we get to our bonus topic, I guess we need to update people on our draft. Peter, congratulations. This is the team you have: Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Martin Truex Jr., and Ryan Preece. Shout out to Caleb. He's the one that's keeping track of this all year. Obviously, with the scoring, I think no bonus points awarded this weekend because none of us had McDowell, Cindric, or Daniel Suarez.
Surprised nobody took McDowell.
Yeah, well, we blanked on that maybe. And good news is Trey Lyle has moved out of last place, passing Mr. Michael Massey, who is now in last. And we have a tight race for last and a tight race for first, as somehow Brian Nolan's team is still winning. And a big weekend for Tom with 135 points. He gets 260. And he is moving closer and closer to catching. So Caleb, technically, congratulations, you win this week. So
Sweet.
Good for you.
That's why I joined.
Brian,
Yeah, you did good points.
Brian and Tom are set up for super speedways though. So
Yeah, we're Massey and I. We're the smart GMs. You know, we're this is a full season, man. This is a long-term play.
long haul.
So, and if my drivers could just stay out of wrecks, I'd be doing great. All right, let's move to our bonus topic. Have you ever seen a racing glove with webbing like that before?
Not before this weekend. No, he had the Aquaman flipper on.
So Joey Logano gets caught with webbing gloves. As someone who saw this story break while at a college game day for Virginia Tech women's basketball, and was like, could not understand what happened, and it took me almost to the end of the race to figure out what happened, because that's when I could actually watch the race. That was weird. Peter, you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of give us context on like everything that happened, and then we'll go into our bonus topic?
Yeah, this kind of just came out of nowhere. NASCAR just randomly made this announcement 2 or so hours before the race, and then it eventually leaked out that between his thumb and index finger on his glove, kind of showing like my hand, he had some webbing, and I'm showing my hand because I have some webbing there too. And it was later shown on the Fox broadcast that he'd go like this during qualifying, and if he holds his thumb out like this while going up against the window, then that's more surface area to deflect more air. And considering that he qualified first and second both these races, that really brings into question, was that qualifying effort legit, or was it hampered a little bit by that little bit of extra fabric?
Didn't people bring up the fact that Daytona, how quickly he took that glove off and like dropped his window net after?
Right, yeah. During his cool down lap in Daytona qualifying, there's footage of him taking off just his left glove, which seems pretty suspicious.
Hey, Michael McDowell's got that Penske Alliance. Has anyone checked his gloves recently?
Ooh, Caleb Barnes already putting on the tinfoil hats, ladies and gentlemen.
If I'm McDowell, I'm protesting. I'm saying I won that Daytona 500 pole and doing like UCF a couple years ago, hanging a banner for it. So.
Well, I think he'll just take his Daytona 500 championship from a few years ago over that pole. So, but that brings us to our favorite topic. What is your favorite NASCAR cheating story? We'll start with the old man who's going to pick something from the 1970s and Michael Massey.
Yeah, not that far back. I don't know if it really classifies as cheating, but
working in the gray area.
It's a moment of instantly getting caught. It would be the 2002 Daytona 500 where Sterling Marlin gets in a wreck with Jeff Gordon and has a tire rub under a red flag. Sterling gets out the car and like, let me just pull this fender out real quick. And then I'll never forget the Benny Parsons be like, you can't do that, Sterling.
Oh, you can't do that.
And NASCAR sends him to the rear, and his bid for a third, that would have been his third Daytona 500.
Yep, third.
Ends because of getting out and working on the car under the red flag.
Spingate is a good one. It's not my pick, but I wanted to give that a shout before we keep going. Leave your comments on what your favorite is in the comment section. Peter, you want to go next?
Yeah, I was torn between two. I like the story Dale Waltrip told when he was on the Dale Jr. download a few years ago, where back in the day in inspection, they would weigh cars pre-race but not post-race. So they would find a way to load the frame rails with buckshot, with lead balls that would fall out during the race. And he would always say bombs away before he released the trap door and they would fall out. I always thought that was funny. And the flagman would always walk around post-race thinking, where'd all these lead balls come from? And no one ever knew at the time.
That's a good one. That's definitely a good one.
I think my favorite is this is way before my time, but I love the old Smokey Unix stories of all of his ingenious inventions. And I think my favorite one is whenever they like something with the gas tank, and like he had all these different big gas tanks, and then they told him he couldn't have a gas tank that big. So then he took like the fuel line and like wrapped it around the interior of the car a bunch, and got away with it that way. I think that's my favorite one of just like, all right, well, you're going to limit the size of my gas tank. Well, let me just see how long I can make this fuel line. And
so I'm not kidding. I nearly said exactly that.
I think we're all thinking.
That's a good one.
My favorite part of that one is he drove the car home. Like he had enough
After he took the
fuel
fuel
in it.
tank out.
Yeah.
Michael Waltrip getting caught with jet fuel is just so wild, and I think that needs to be mentioned. Like his gas tank was laced with jet fuel is a pretty good one. I think the one where Jimmy, it gets caught that Chad Canal says to Jimmy Johnson is like, all right, if you win this race, we need you to bust out this, this back frame.
Oh yeah.
That's also a good one. Stuart Haas's cheating these last couple of years it's just funny because they don't win.
Yeah,
so,
at the
so
Coastal
sad.
Sugar
They
last
don't
year.
even cheat well.
At Charlotte last year, Briscoe had an illegal engine plate and was being outrun by BJ McLeod. Like, if you're gonna cheat, at least be faster than BJ McLeod.
But yeah, I think my favorite is just the buckshot's a good one. I'm trying to remember. There's I think ultimately I might have to lean with the jet fuel because that was just to me like I was a kid and it was like jet fuel, like what? And it was Daytona 500 week. It's like jet fuel. I mean, credit to Michael Waltrip, I guess. But I think ultimately that's the one I'm gonna have to go with in that one. Leave us your comments down below on this video on what you think your favorite NASCAR cheating story is. Also, you can add us at TreyLauVT, at M_Massey22, at Caleb Barnes _ and at Peter Stratta on Twitter, X, whatever the crap you want to call it, for your thoughts on this podcast. As I do my close, Peter, anything you want to plug before we head on out of here? Obviously, the owner of TSJ Sports, along with Noah Lewis, and the dynamic duo that is TSJ. Anything else you want to plug?
Well, you just did most of my plugging for me. Just check out TSJ Sports on both our social medias, myself and Noah Lewis. We have a bunch of great content there already and more content coming down the pipeline. And then just follow myself on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube for other at-track content and more interviews and other fun stuff.
Massey, are you doing anything this week? You're heading to Vegas.
Yep, going to Las Vegas Motor Speedway to cover some races. And I'm gonna go do some gambling and maybe cover some races on the side.
Just don't end up with Mike Tyson's Tiger.
I was gonna say your gamble this week is you have to share a room with Brian Nolan. That's your gamble this week.
Yeah, that'll be the biggest gamble. I can't say anything more about that man, but he's one of a kind.
We love you, Brian.
And I have a column coming out this Fire on Fridays column this Friday. So
it's straight fire.
Yeah. Check it on frontstretch.com.
Caleb, anything you want to plug before we get on out of here?
I'm hoping to get back in the writing this week with Thinking Out Loud after Vegas. I've been working the past few weekends, so I haven't been able to get to it yet. But these next, as the season goes on, I'm hoping to take that column over and at least hold the fort down until Dalton gets back from his mysterious places. So
exactly, mysterious places is where he's at. As for me, I will just listen to all our podcasts. Next up is Bringing the Heat with Brian Nolan. I cannot say who the guest is because he's not confirmed yet, but if knock on wood he does, he is a iconic broadcaster that might be in his final season. Hopefully he confirms with us. We'll also have reaction to Atlanta and preview Las Vegas. We also got our new host for Through the Gears, Mr. Tino Tino is our new host for Through the Gears, so check that out. It also might end up on the YouTube page, so make sure you subscribe, hit notifications for youtube.com/front stretch. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Peter, thanks for, I guess we have not annoyed you enough that you keep coming on to Happy Hour. We have a good time when you're on, my friend. So, thank you so much for hopping on this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
So, for Peter, for Caleb, for Michael, my name is Trey Lyle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Happy Hour.